That genius level performance, he looked at it and he said, okay, well, what are the key characteristics? Now, what do you think the key characteristics would be of where perhaps either you've performed at that genius level, i.e. you've done something that your stakeholders didn't expect? So it could be your teacher, it could be your coach, it could be your employer. What do you think would be the key ingredients to making that happen? I'm not going to let Anthony answer that.
Motivation.
So motivation is one. Motivation is clear. But inside ourselves, we've got to understand what actually motivates us. Because if we look at it, what really truly motivates an individual? Do you think we could actually articulate, the majority of people could actually articulate what truly motivates them? Because we'll turn out, oh yeah, we want to earn more money, we want to do this. But sometimes it's a bit superficial. You know, how much do we actually, have we internally realised in ourselves of what we're actually capable of? So motivation is one element. What else?
Goals.
Goals, we need to have some direction, but again, goals and motivation are highly interlinked. Because if you think about it, the motivation is sometimes driven by the fact that you want to achieve an outcome. But the problem with that again is that, you know, in yogic philosophy, there's a saying that it's not the end result, it's the journey that you take that's the most important. Sometimes we get so fixed on the goal that we'll lose our values and our beliefs to actually achieve a goal. So it's like telling us saying, I want to be rich, and you set the goal, I want to be a millionaire by the time I'm 20. So what happens? You go and rob a bank. You know, you've achieved your goal, but you've achieved it in an inappropriate way. So you've got to turn around and say, well, what really are my values and my beliefs? What's actually driving me to achieve those particular goals? So goals are important, but again, we've got to look at what's actually getting us to those goals. What else do you think? Commitments is important. If we're looking to commit ourselves to a particular direction, we've got to understand how do we actually gain that commitment. Where is that commitment actually coming from inside us? So, you know, again, if you look at it, where someone performs exceptionally well, there has to be some kind of drive and commitment towards achieving those particular elements. But unfortunately, again, you know, without self-reflection, it's very difficult to understand really what is driving us, because if you ask a person, particularly the younger we are, each day our level of commitment on different things changes. Similarly, you know, you find, for example, people will come train here, there'll be different motivations. There's a reason why on New Year's Day, the motivation level and the commitment level is that little bit higher, called guilt. You know, as you progress through the year, the guilt subsides and something else takes over. So is that commitment, or is that just a temporary fantasy? You know, sometimes we have to be clear in ourselves what's actually driving us. So sometimes you have to find a bigger link towards what's actually driving us to achieve this genius level performance. What the study identified was that essentially there are two key ingredients. And the two key ingredients are authenticity and self-awareness. When they talked about authenticity, how genuine are we? How genuine are we in actually putting forward and understanding who we are? Because sometimes the biggest thing you find in today's society is that we want to fit in. If you look at the genius level, the Richard Bransons, the Steve Jobs of this world, the one thing they did was that they never fitted in. They challenged. They challenged the status quo. They challenged every segment of their life. You know, if you get a chance, it's worthwhile listening to the TED Talks on YouTube, and you'll be surprised at what people actually talk about. Because sometimes, you know, if you look at someone like Richard Branson, you'd expect him to talk about his brand, talk about how he created these fantastic businesses. He said, my passion wasn't in building the business, my passion was actually in challenging the status quo. He said, whatever people did traditionally, I wanted to change. So when I flew on an aeroplane, I was bored out of my mind flying on British Airways, but it was such a boring experience. I thought, why not change it? And that mindset created his level of performance. if you look at this genius level type performance, authenticity is understanding yourself, that you're comfortable with your own personality, you're comfortable with your own makeup, and as a result of that, you actually are prepared to challenge the boundaries of what society is actually put in front of you. The unfortunate thing is, in a lot of instances, we try to be something that we're not. And the only thing that causes is stress. You know, if you look at why we have stress in society, it's because people aren't in control. Either because they've set their expectations too high, and as a result, they overstretch themselves, which causes stress, or they want to achieve something that fits into someone else's world, and it could be our boss's world. And by doing that, what we actually do, because we get the nice tap on the back from our boss, is that, yeah, that's fine when it happens, but you're living your boss's life, you're living your boss's world. At the end of the day, who's saying that the boss is right? You know, sometimes we have to look at it and say, well, what actually is right to us? Let's set our own boundaries of where we want to be. At the end of the day, no one says you can't. That's the beauty for the youngsters, is that those boundaries, unfortunately, sometimes can get set in school. You know, if you look at, it's always interesting to look at the people who are the biggest troublemakers of school. They usually tend to do quite well later on in life because they don't accept anything that's given to them. You know, sometimes you have to just nibble away and say, right, I'm going to challenge that. Why is that the case? The reality is teachers don't like it. Bosses don't like it. They don't want to be questioned. But if we don't have that questioning, if we didn't have people like Steve Jobs questioning, people like Elon Musk at Tesla questioning and challenging, just think how far we would be today compared to where we are. You know, the reason why it's realistic to assume we can travel to the moon on a holiday is essentially because people said it's possible. There's no such thing as can't. It's just how. How do we make it happen? So when you hear yourself turning around and saying, we can't do that, change that to, how can I make it happen? Because then your mindset changes quite significantly. You also find, in being authentic, you get a greater release. Within our brains, we have a variety of neurotransmitters, and one that's critical is serotonin. That happens, there are two ways you can get serotonin released into your body. One is you can take a tablet, you know, so these are the things that make you feel good. Or the other way is to actually be honest and get the internal chemical release by doing the things you feel most comfortable doing. Things that give you pleasure, things that you enjoy. One of the easiest ways of doing that is putting a smile on your face. You know, it suddenly changes the whole complexion of your face, it changes the whole complexion of your mindset, and that makes you think in a different way. So authenticity is understanding who we are and understanding how we can actually affect the outside world. We are in control. However, the biggest problem we've got is, who are we? And that's where the second element comes in, is self-awareness, is that we have to look inside ourselves and be able to articulate what our key values are. You know, what actually is important to you. You know, you sit down, you know, I'll turn around and say, okay, well, when it comes down to it, for me it's enjoyment, for me it's about understanding who I am, it's about my family, and it's about Manchester United. You put all those things in place, I'm quite content.